There's so much to talk about in this parsha, but I'd like to deal maybe with one thing that really gives us a great insight into Yaakov Avinu on many different levels. Let's go to page 320. We'll discuss the initial meeting between Yaakov and Rachel. Sentence 9 begins with, he saw her coming, and then just finally, sentence 11, he goes over, Yaakov goes to Rachel, and he kisses her, and he raises his voice in crying, and he told Rachel that he's her father's brother, and he's also the son of Rivka, and he runs, and she tells her father. One thing very interesting in that sentence, Rashi says in sentence 12, if he says he's Rivka's son, so he understands that he's an uncle, but he doesn't say he says he's the brother of her father. Her father's his uncle. Her father is Rivka's brother. Rivka's his mother, so really her father is his uncle, and he introduces himself as her father's brother. So Rashi says, on page 321, he says, if it comes to deceit, I'm just as deceitful as he is. If he's a decent person, I'll be decent with him, but if he's a deceitful person, I just have the same skills of deceit. I mean, Lovin's a world-class deceiver. So, it's already he's putting himself into the major leagues of deceit. He has a little basic training with the story with getting the blessings from his father. But then you read the story, he was just seeming blowing his horn, but it's not true. Her father out-manipulates him. Her father, at the end of the day, gives him lay with all the dealings and everything else. Her father switches. It's a little arrogant to make a statement that it becomes obvious not to be true. Right? It's obviously not true. So either the Torah is giving us a huge criticism about Yaakov, that even Yaakov Avinu exaggerated, or the Torah is giving us a whole new understanding of the story. And there's no reason to think that the Torah is gratuitously telling us that Yaakov Avinu was arrogant. Okay, so we have to understand, what is this? He's not. Her father outmaneuvers him. Let's go further. And then the Torah says like this. When Lavan hears the name of Yaakov, he runs to greet him. He hugs him. He kisses him. He brings him to his house. And he tells Lavan everything that transpired. The way Rashi explains why before, when he saw Rivka, he was crying, and Rashi explains because he didn't have any gifts for her. Lavan anticipated gifts, and now he runs and he tells Lavan the story that Esav was out to kill him, and his Esav's son took all his property, so that's why he's impecunious. So Lavan tells him the following. You're my flesh and blood. You can stay with me for a month. Okay. Let's read the Rashi there. This is unbelievable Rashi. Nevertheless, you're my flesh and blood. 14 on page 321. Now I really shouldn't bring you into the house, because you don't have any money. He runs to greet him. So Rashi says he's motivated by money. He gives him a hug, and he gives him a kiss. And Rashi says over there also, a hug was a body frisk to see what he had there. And finally a kiss, Rashi says he stuck his tongue in his mouth to see if he was holding any, because he didn't have anything on his body. Maybe he had precious stones. Okay, that's what we understand to be the truth. But Lavan is a Ramai. Lavan is a deceiver. One thing a deceiver will never tell you, I'm a phony, I'm a $3 bill. He'll never say that. Listen what happened. He ran, hugged him, and kissed him. What impression was he trying to give Yaakov Avinu? He loves him. Right? That's what the impression he's giving him. And then he tells him to his face, he got no money, he can't come in. That means everything I did now was a phony. How could that be? He's too smart to say, I am a phony. It goes against his whole being. His whole being is to be a phony. And now he announces that Yaakov was not a stupid person, a wise person, no money. Out of here. Yeah, you can finally, you're my relative, you can stay for a month. And Rashi says, but provided you tend to my sheep. But he's announcing, I am a phony. Nobody can do that. Not a small class confidence man. Yet a world class confidence man can't do that. Another problem. Also, the rabbis don't make up stuff. On the face of the story, it says he runs, hugs and kisses, and that's what he's certainly trying to present that image. We're relatives, you're my law, I never met you, you're my nephew, etc., etc. Where do the rabbis have the audacity to make up that he's checking out his mouth? There has to be something in the text. Even if we'll say, which I don't believe it's ever true, that Medrashim were some secret message that we got over from generation to generation. Medrashim are really 1,000%. If you read the sentences carefully, you will see where it's in the Medrash. Medrash is really the skill that the Jewish people have honed over the generations of how to analyze the text. We are the greatest readers of text. Our rabbis, the Bible critics, thinks in the 1900s, they invented biblical criticism. We are the greatest biblical critics, and we read the sentences, and that's what so all the Medrashim are there. But even if that weren't true, we all know Rashi doesn't bring Medrashim. Rashi is a commentator on the text. Why does Rashi bring that he was checking out his mouth? It's such a ludicrous idea that, and if there's nothing in the text that compels it, so Rashi wouldn't bring it. And take a look at the Rashi. And he kissed him. Maybe he brought pearls and he's checking, and they're in his mouth. It wasn't a kiss, it was put his tongue in his mouth to see what he had over there. It's like unbelievable. Where is this in the text? Nothing can be in a Rashi that the text is not compelling. But I'm telling you, by the way, besides that, all the Medrashim are just as compelling. You just have to learn how to read Medrash. And then let's go one more sentence. After the month, he says, you're gonna work for me for nothing? Tell me what you want to get paid. Lovin says, all of a sudden. And Lovin has two daughters, sentence 16. And Rachel's very beautiful. And Yaakov loves Rachel, and he says, I'll work for you for 7 years. And Lovin says, good. I'd rather give her to you than somebody else. Stay here. Sit, dwell with me. And Yaakov works with Rachel for 7 years. And they're in his eyes like a few days because of his great love for her. So look at Rashi. What does that mean, a few days? There are a few days that his mother mentioned him. His mother told him, I want you to go get married. You're going to the house of Lavan to find a wife. And you can stay there a few days. And Rashi says, so when it means here, this was in his eyes a few days, he felt that he was not violating his mother's wishes, but this was a fulfillment of her wishes. Right? She only gave permission to stay a few days. At the end of the day, he stays 22 years, and he's actually punished for that because he stayed too long. But this 7 years is justified. Did Lavan ask him for 7 years for his wife? That was, he volunteered the 7 years. Where's the Siyomim Machodim? Lavan wouldn't have done it. 2 years. Where is there any indication over here that this is, I mean, what did he do it for? Because he decided what he should be volunteering to Lavan. If Lavan says, you want my daughter work for me for 7 years, I can understand that. But Lavan didn't say that. Lavan didn't say that. Yaakov Yaakov offered that. How can he say that this is a fulfillment of what his mother said? And why? How is it a fulfillment of what his mother said? Then we come to the next door. Now, Lavan, he's lily white. He never does anything wrong. You promised me, Rachel. Did I ever say I'm not going to give you Rachel? Of course I'm going to give you Rachel. Did I say promise you Rachel be number one? No. I don't promise you Rachel to be number one. We have a custom in our place that the younger girl can't be married before the older girl. Well, that's the custom. Okay. Of course, at the end of the week, you can marry Rachel. Everything so far is perfect. Everything so far. Lavan did not betray. Never. A confidence man can't get away with a swindle. It always has to be. Unfortunately, you misunderstood what I meant, but this I'm right on the mark. I'm giving you what I said. Yuval, I didn't ask you for 7 years. I'm giving what you said. I just never said. You assumed it. So you paid for one. This is the source in the Torah. You pay for one, you get one for free. That's what it should be. Except there's a problem here. Then Lavan insists on 7 years. Where does Lavan have a right to insist on 7 years? Where does this come from? Where does this come from? Lavan asked for the second one for 7 years. Where is this? There seems to be no justification for that. How does Lavan ask for something? He's too smart to ask for something. Listen, you promised, they did. Okay, then you threw it in, fine. How does he dare ask for 7 years? Okay, let's begin here with the story. Maybe just to understand the text of the story. So we should understand what the rabbis were saying, that he was checking out his mouth. Let's go back to the story. This is reading the story. When you see it, you begin to understand that the rabbis knew how to read a pasuk, but we don't have the slightest idea. Let's go back to the sentence we started, sentence 11. Yaakov kissed Rachel, and he cried. Cried, I have no gifts, let's say. Okay. So Yaakov kissed Rachel. Also a little, Torah doesn't have to say everything he did. Nobody would tell over a story the Chafetz Chaim kissed a woman. Needs a little bit of explanation there also. Now let's go to the story about sentence 13. When Lavan hears, he runs, he hugs him, and he kisses him. The Torah changes the verb. In the first place it says, Vayishak Yaakov l'Rachel. In the second place it says, Vayinashek lo. What's the difference between Vayishak, means to kiss, and Vayinashek, means to kiss? This is something that is obviously very puzzling in the text. 5 sentences earlier, it means to kiss. Vayishak means he kissed, and Vayinashek means kiss. But if you can say Vayishak, you don't have to add a nun for no reason. And especially, we just said Vayishak Yaakov l'Rachel, so Vayishak Lavan l'Yaakov. What's Vayinashek? What I think the rabbis are telling us, and actually seem to believe this is probably a Rashi and Shir understands. There's a lot of different kind of kisses, Rashi says. There's a kiss, you kiss somebody on the top of their head. You kiss somebody on their shoulder, on the back of the hand. And then there's a mouth-to-mouth kiss. Yishokeni minishikos piyu. That's what Rashi introduces. Shir HaShirim was not a kiss that God is kissing us in a platonic way of greeting. It's an intimate kiss. It's a kiss mouth to mouth. Vayishak means Yaakov kissed Rachel, but Rachel didn't kiss Yaakov. Yaakov bent over, he greeted him. Must have been, I guess it was a Latin culture over there. Kissed her on the top of the head. Vayinashek means he kissed her and she kissed him. He caused one to kiss each other. It's actually a PL. He coerced the kiss, which may just mean he pressured a kiss, which either is like I'm saying, Lavan kissed Yaakov, and Yaakov was kissed him, or it's a PL that he pressured him to kiss him. Why? Because it's very uncomfortable to be kissed by a man on the mouth. So that's why you need a PL here. Or Vayanashek, what I think is the means, he kissed him, and he kissed him means to say, Yishokeni min nishikos pihu. It means a kiss mouth to mouth. Therefore, our rabbis are bothered by a very serious, and Rashi, who reads text, is telling us, what do you mean Vayanashek? We just said Vayishak. And if that's the greeting, the way you greet a woman, a fortiori, that would be the appropriate way to greet your nephew. Kiss him on the top of the head, on the back of the hand, just like Yaakov kissed Rachel. That's an appropriate way of a greeting. It's just a greeting. It's a totally asexual and no intimacy, and that's why all of a sudden is there an intimate kiss here, mouth to mouth. That coerces Chazal to tell you he was checking out his mouth, just so we should understand there's nothing here in the text. Okay. But still, it doesn't answer any of the questions of, but I am a phony. I'm making believe I love you, but I am one huge phony. That doesn't answer that. And it certainly doesn't answer, it's Yomi Machodim, what is he offering for? What's the matter with him here? And where's his intelligence here? Now, let's go to one more story in the Torah. The whole thing begins to fall into place. The end of 14 years, Lovan asked him to stay there. Yaakov wants to go, no, stay another 6 years. So at the end of the 20 years, Pasuk says like this. Yaakov wants to leave, and actually he sees that Laban doesn't have the same friendliness towards him. He can start reading his face, which is a big problem for a guy who's a master manipulator. But it's very fascinating how his manipulations were starting to break it down. That's another. Go to page 343. And even Yaakov, probably in chapter 31, sentence 1 and 343. And Yaakov overheard the sons of Lavan saying, everything Yaakov has amassed, this fortune, it all really belongs to our father. That introduces the next sentence, which probably mitigates a little bit, softens our question when it says Yaakov saw the face of Lavan, and it's not like yesterday and the day before. He's a master manipulator. He doesn't give up. He just has a poker face for sure. But once you already know from his children what he's feeling, then maybe you have a little more. You look a little more intensely, and maybe you can catch him. There's an introduction here that on the own. Probably Lavan would not have been, Yaakov couldn't have seen it on the face either, but the Torah introduces, he gets some information of how the family feels about him, how his father-in-law, brothers-in-law feel about him, and that probably gave him an ability to give a more intensive gaze. Okay, but meanwhile, and God says to Yaakov in sentence 3, return to your house of your fathers, where you're born, I'll be with you. We have the most incredible thing. Sentence 4, Yaakov calls his wives, and he says, not God told me we have to go back. He starts with a whole story. I see your father's face is not the way it hasn't been till now. And you know how honestly I worked, and you know how much your father manipulated me, and he changed a whole blasting, everything being true, how our father treated him, hurt him. He goes through some of the switches he made, a whole litany of things the father did. And now we go, and he says also, God now told me to leave. Sentence 346 on 14, they answer. Rachel and Leah answer, and they say, do we have any more share in our father's house? We're like strangers to him. He sold us, and not only that, he devoured our money. And everything that God gave us through our husband making in the sheep, it's ours. It all belongs to us. Now take a look at Rashi. So first of all, we get this text, the context of the story here, which is just very important to realize. God told him to go. Told him, it's time to go. means he doesn't want them to go. He needs buy-in. He doesn't want the wives to be forcibly, resentfully taken away from their father. He needs it the right way for a woman. If you want to sever a relationship, you want buy-in from her. He doesn't, God told us to go. So he needs, at the Torah is telling us, Yaakov, they're going to go with him. It's not a question. I mean, they're righteous women, so they're certainly going to go. An angel says to go, they're going to go. But they're emotionally not separated, and therefore he needed buy-in. That's what the Torah is telling us, and what's the buy-in? The way your father's treating me. And then they respond, we ourselves are strangers. He sold us. Now look, what does that mean, Rashi? Let's start with sentence 15. We're strangers. Even at the time when it's the practice of people to give their daughters a dowry when they get married, he treated us like strangers. He sold us for wages that you provided him. And not only that, it's our money. He didn't even give us he even withheld the money due for the wages of your labor. This is what he says to them. He says, they say to him an incredible thing. Our father sold us. First of all, a decent person gives his daughter an adunya, dowry. And even if he doesn't, he got wages for us, marrying us. That money he kept for himself also. What created the buy-in that Yaakov was able to get his daughters, his wives, away from their father? Because their father took all the money. In his greed, he gave them nothing. In his greed, not only did he give them nothing, the money that Yaakov worked, the ways he worked, he kept for himself. How did that happen? If Yaakov had not volunteered to work for 7 years, would that have happened? Of course not. He would not have been entitled to wages.
But he wouldn't have been, Laban wouldn't have given him a daughter.
What?
He hadn't done
No, we have no indication of that. We have no indication of that at all. We have no indication. That was his involvement. We have no indication. That's what I'm saying. This was the master manipulation of Lavan. A con man is using a person's greed against himself. That's why it's always, very rarely people are going to go to the police and report they were swindled, because part of the swindle was that you tap into somebody else's own avariciousness, and he was, maybe doing things that are borderline, and that's exactly, Yaakov outmaneuvered Lavan here. Lavan thought, and we'll see what he thought Yaakov was doing by volunteering 7 years, but the real, what Yaakov was doing for working for 7 years was catering to Lavan's greed, knowing that he would have this great appetite to take a huge amount of money, and knowing that he would keep the money, because he knows who he is. He knows he's a master manipulator. Everything is about him. There's nothing for anybody else. And therefore he out-swindled the swindler. Do you hear the brilliance of this whole move? The whole move is he could not have gotten the girls away from their father had he not worked for 7 years. That's their own mouth. I'm not saying that. They said the only reason we buy into leaving your father, because when you worked for him for 7 years, he kept that money and didn't even give it to us. That's what alienated. That was the mock-up. That was the final straw that they understood how their father doesn't give a darn about them. It's all about him. Money that's... First one, the decent thing is to give your daughter a gift. But to take your daughter's money for yourself is the ultimate demeaning of your daughter, the ultimate alienation, and therefore we don't belong here. That's what they said. That could not have happened unless Yaakov was working for Lavan. Yaakov catered to his greed. I'm just saying with the storyline. Yaakov catered to his greed, and what happened? Because Lavan is so greedy, he grabbed up, going to be a lot of money. Not for my daughters. Who's this money going to be? For me, Lavan. And as soon as this gets pointed out to the daughters of who their father is, Yaakov doesn't even say that. He gives them enough, but he swindled him, and then that triggers, oh boy, he did exactly the same to us and worse. We're his daughters. Therefore, the only way Yaakov was able to take the daughters comfortably and sever the ties with Lavan And by the way, that's not a small thing. Lavan's a world-class person. Lavan eventually becomes Bilam, our sages say, which is the counterpoint of Moshe Rabbeinu and of Avram Avinu, the Mishnah. So to sever that is a very valiant. At the end of this week's Parashat, there's actually a treaty of separation and boundary lines put in, which was necessary in order to really make sure this break. But to create the emotional break, what created the emotional break? The fact that daughters realized the alienation. That was only possible, why? Because Yaakov offered to work, knowing that the person who's avaricious and greedy is going to keep that for himself. And therefore, that's Yaakov's way of taking Lavan's daughters from him. Achiv ani bramos. The Torah is telling you he outsmarted, I'm equal to him. And the Torah is telling you he's equal to him. And everything that he thinks he did actually went against him. So we started with a question. It's like arrogance. It's the exact opposite. I'll go back now to the story of the work. So first of all, now we know another thing. That's Yomi Machadim. Where did his mother ever say he died at work the base 7 years? His mother says you're going to bring the girls back from there. Well, you want to bring the girls back from there means I have to disconnect them from there. The working 7 days in Yaakov's head was the only way he has a chance of severing the connection between Lavan and his daughters. If Lavan's greed will be so all-encompassing to him that he's going to grab everything he can get from Yaakov and not give it to his daughters. Do you understand how well you have to know a person, how well you have to understand the person in order to do this? What he thinks. I mean, you're risking 7 years of hard work, day and night hard work, knowing that you're sure at the end of the day, this is the greatest investment, return your investment. You got your wives. You disconnected the wives from their father. And we could not have built Jewish people without that. We know that from the storyline because he wasn't going to take his... God said return. He understands he can't return unless the girls sever their emotional connection. That's why he goes through the story. And then when he tells them what he did to him, that awakens in them what he did to them, and now they're disconnected from their father. That is the storyline over here. And therefore, that's Yomi Machad. Lavan doesn't perceive this as the, master manipulator has to always figure out what does the other guys think. What did Lavan think? What did Yaakov? You can't manipulate a person unless you could. But he needs an idea that he can't think that you're trying to do that. What did he think? Man's all of a sudden offering 7 years. What did he think? The man is offering 7 years. There's only one possible explanation. He has no money here. Normally he cried, the Torah told us. He was devastated because when you marry a woman, you have to give her a feeling you respect her. The basis of every marriage, the Rambam says, is you have to respect her. Not only you have to respect her more than yourself. And sometime I'll explain where the Rambam knows that and what that means. Every marriage starts with not you love your wife, you respect her more. You give her a lot of your hard earnings. This was Yaakov's way of giving Rachel the respect that she would be necessary in order to her to feel good. That's it's Lavan understood, which is the greatest manipulation of all time. You have a reason that's plausible, and it's true too, but there's another reason that you understand what's going to happen with the proceeds. So both things are true. Yaakov is doing something that's the only way he's willing to take Rachel. He cried. I mean, that's not a small... What about an emotion here of one of the greatest people to live of all time? Cried. That's how devastating it was to him. He couldn't be able to give her the respect she deserved. He cried. And there, what happens? Now he's offered for marriage. He was crying. It's not because he thought she needed things, so she's a high-maintenance girl. He would have married her. She's a high-maintenance girl. In fact, the Torah says she's acting as a shepherdess. That's not a high-maintenance girl. That's a girl that's doing menial work around the house. But he needs to give her the feeling of her value to him. And that's what the idea of giving gifts, and by the way, that's a huge custom through the generation of Jews, except it became totally misunderstood. It's a very difficult, very often people start thinking that the idea of gifts is the gift is what's important. Instead of the gift is really it should be taken as the respect that's behind the gift, how much I value you. That's the whole meaning of Jews for thousands of years. Savlonis is giving presents, comes from here. It has nothing to do, because our wives are high maintenance. We have to show them how much we value them. And he cries. So loving us, probably still saw the tears on his eyes. Or not, he's smart too. He understands it's not something he can do. He's devastated by that. So what does he do? He offers 7 years of work, which will make Rachel feel unbelievable. And now he sees another thing. I never told you I was going to give her first. I was going to marry you off first. Okay. I never said. Okay. I did. You got one for free. Okay. And all of a sudden he says 7 years of work. He says, I know that to you the definition of a woman feeling good about herself requires what?
7 years.
7 years of work is the way you value her. Of course, you're not going to now devalue your other wife. You owe me 7 years of work. Now, it's Lavan is going totally consistent with what he understands what Yaakov is doing. And by the way, that's all true. It's all true. Yaakov wants to give Rachel, and therefore Yaakov has not a second hesitation. I mean, Yaakov said, no, that's not our deal. You gotta. No. It's not about me. You understand? It's not about me. It's about my daughter. You do this for daughter one because you want her to value, and now it's your wife. You want her to feel like she's worthless. Of course you're going to work. Of course I'm going to work 7 years. And by the way, at the end of the day, that comes out. Now he has both wives. He has both. Yaakov has in the back of his mind that he understands what's going to be with this money, because he knows who Lavan is, a master manipulator. Everything is only about him. He answered every question except for how does he then reveal he's a $3 bill? That's what he's doing. He runs, I hug this. We're talking about the smartest people around of all time. He's saying like this. I know you. I see how devastated you are. You can't do anything for this woman that you apparently like. You're not a taker. You don't want to take anything. You want to be able to give. I can't take you to my house. You're going to be a receiver. You don't want to be a receiver. He's not saying I'm a phony. He's saying it's not you. It's not in your interest. Do you want to be now a parasite in my house? Is that what you're looking for? He's not saying, of course I'm happy you should stay here. But I know you're going to be uncomfortable here, because if, in fact, you have nothing to give that you're receiving from me, you're going to be uncomfortable. Lavan's not revealing he's a total phony. Lavan is understanding the basis of all human relations. With Yaakov is the ultimate of this, that a relationship is not taking something. A relationship is based on giving. I give you and you give me. If I don't give you, then I'm taking you, and I'm not interested in doing that. So it was when I thought you had money, you'll give me, and I'll give you. We'll have a healthy relationship. But now that you have nothing, I'm doing you a favor. It's going to be namalik sufa. You're going to be ashamed by being in my house. That's what he's telling him. I understand. He's giving him a huge compliment. Of course I would take you into the house. Now, we're not talking about I wouldn't do it, but it's not, I know you and it's not good for you. If you have nothing to give, how are you going to feel in the relationship? You want to be in the house of your uncle where you have nothing to give him? You're crying your eyes out because you have nothing to give a girl you like, and now you're going to want to be, even though we all know a girl wants to get married more than a man, the Talmud says. So she's happy to get married, but yeah, she's happy to give herself, but he doesn't want to give her. He doesn't want to receive her. He wants to give her. This, by the way, this is still true today. It should be true. So for all of us that aren't yet married, it's not about taking, it's about giving. It's about giving. It's about making her feel, giving her, committing to take care of her, not about receiving. And therefore he says, you're going to come to my house. you're going to be very uncomfortable here. You know what? You want to come in, you stay a relative. I mean, you don't mind, you can take a little bit from an uncle, and you're also, of course, going to be working at the same time, so you come in. That's the story here. Lavan was outmaneuvered by the master manipulator, and everything Yaakov did here was in order to create the sense of emes, to build up people's self-worth, to give people a sense of value about themselves. And Lavan knows that about him. He's not looking to be a taker. He's only looking to build up. Except what he was smart enough to figure out, somebody that is such a manipulator is all about himself. And I will be able to create a situation. I'm doing what's great for the girls, but I know that their father is going to use this as an opportunity in his greed and avarice to get all their money, and therefore these are yomim achadim. Now I'm going to be able to get the girls away from him.